Very good. Kim?
Great. You enjoy your time away, your trip?
I did. Yeah. Well,
Great.
got some stories for it.
Hi, Shannon. Enjoy your time away, your trip?
I did. Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioner Brown.
Yes, huh? Hi.
All right, commissioners, I have the webinar now up and running. So we are recording and we are also live streaming on YouTube for the first time. Moving forward, the city is going to stream all of its council meetings as well as advisory board meetings and committee meetings on YouTube where the public can watch it. So this will be our first run at it. So thank you for the extra time as I set that up. It is a little bit of a process over here. So I appreciate it. And Chair Jackson, you are good to go.
Very good. Thank you, Shannon. Well, welcome everyone to our work session for the Commission on Equity. We are gathered here tonight to have a two-part agenda, one whereby we'll have the workshop on how we listen that was originally scheduled for workshop number 6, and we've moved it to now so that it can accommodate our community engagement session next month. And so the agenda is divided between those two items, and we are looking forward to our remaining couple of commissioners joining us, but right now we do have a quorum and we can proceed. And so with that, are we ready for Mr. Medley, Shannon?
Yes, Chair Jackson.
Okay.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. So I'm on my side. Can I still screen share? I should be able to. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Let me just pull up on my side our agenda. And then Shannon, I'm not sure, but what do you think would be the easiest for the link if I click it on my side and I'm screen sharing, or if you click it on your side to screen share the video link? And I'm wondering what would be easiest for like audio and.
I can certainly pull up the video, Tevin, and run it from my computer if that helps you.
Yeah, let's try that just in case, because I'm not sure if there might be some audio thing I don't know about. But if all else fails, we can always switch up again.
Well, Tevin, thank you for being willing to shift your long-range agenda to accommodate us tonight with this particular work session that you hadn't planned for several months. But it should be of great use to us and helpful as we're looking at those November listening sessions. So thank you.
Absolutely, no problem at all. And so while I'm getting that pulled up on my side, we just have a quick icebreaker check-in for folks who have been here before. It's just, we're going to do popcorn style. How are you showing up today, and any access needs? And so I'll go first. That today was, for me, a particularly busy Monday. Which busy is good, but requiring me to just be very much on my toes. So yeah, so I'm showing up ready and still excited and no access needs. And I will popcorn it over to Annie.
Well, I'm showing up rested and really excited about our upcoming community engagements. So we want to do it. I'm here for it. And I don't need any access, extra things. Oh, and I'm going to popcorn it over to Clifton.
Cliff, are you there?
Oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I was making notes. So what is the question
There
I'm
we go.
responding to?
How are you showing up today? What's your energy?
Oh, my energy is high. I'm always ready to go. I kind of look forward to it. Being retired and do what I do. When come to these meetings, I get excited. So it's a great opportunity for me to contribute to Lacey. So I'm full of energy, ready to go. Thank you. All right, let's see who I'll pass it to. Annie. I'm sorry,
I just
Christine.
did it.
Yeah, I am motivated. I think I was out of work for most of last week. And so this week, or today actually, I just kind of organized my work for the rest of the week, and I'm back at it and ready to be productive. So I'm carrying that over to this. So that's a good thing. No access needs. And I'll send it over to Kim.
Hello, everybody. I don't have any access need. I had pretty productive Monday, got quite a bit of work done. And so I guess I am kind of cooling my brain and slowly getting into this side of the air, the new meeting. So I'll be kind of calming down and picking up slowly here. So I'll pass it on to Linus.
To who?
Hello, Alanis, me. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. My energy is currently in a healing state. I am recovering from a head injury, so please excuse any abnormal behavior. I do not have any technical issues. I will say my Wi-Fi is absolutely horrible. Besides that, I'm here, I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to see all the amazing work we get done today. And I popcorn it to, let's see. I'm not sure if Jonathan has gone yet. Jonathan Hegwood? Okay, perfect. I'll popcorn it to you then.
I am showing up, just getting off of work about 5 minutes ago, so please excuse my tardiness. So I'm a bit rushed, but I'm excited to be here and to dive into this work head first. So I suppose I will pass it over to Shannon.
Well, good evening, everyone. I have no access issues, and I am feeling really good right now. So I'm excited to be here with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for that. And I'm going to figure out my screen share. So that's good. So as folks can see, this is our agenda today. So what we really want to discuss today is how do we listen? And it is, for me, listening kind of like a muscle where it does need to be trained and can be trained to become stronger. And so if folks are comfortable, and not everyone has to provide input at this stage on this, but if anyone has a particular situation that you could remember, doesn't have to be related to anything we're discussing today, but anytime that you have ever felt that you just weren't being heard, what I'm going to do on my side is I'm going to take some notes about what I hear. But if there's any occasion, it could be simple, it could be complex, it doesn't have to be heavy, it could be light, but anytime that you just felt like there was something that you wanted to convey and it just wasn't heard, and maybe what that experience was like for you. Again, you don't have to share, but if you're comfortable to do so, feel free in the next couple of moments, and I'll be silent while folks think a little bit, and then feel free to just speak right up. Yeah.
Well, I'll go first. In fact, that's what I was making notes on to be able to respond to this. I remember back when I was in the military, and I was sent off to some advanced staff training for about 9 weeks. And then when I returned back to my unit, and I was the adjutant, the administrative officer for that particular unit. And it was time for us to go to some training. And so we write an operations order, and it has various annexes to it. And so, of course, my personnel administrative annex has to be completed. And so, having all this fresh new learnings, I incorporated some of that into my annex and updated it, and what I thought would be make us more effective in our role. But my boss, my manager, questioned what I was doing, questioned why, and basically shut me down, saying, no, that's not the way we do it. You need to go back, revert back to the way we've always done it, and that's what we're going to do. And so at that point, I just didn't know how to feel after having gone through all that training and learned all these new things. And this was an opportunity to come back and incorporate some of this. And he was of the mindset that, no, we don't change the way we do things. And so, no. And that really set me back. And I just was upset for quite some time behind that.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing.
Oh, I guess, okay. We just talk then, I guess. Okay. So this is Kim, and I guess I'll share my experience. Of course, English is my second language. I mean, I came to US in my early 20s. So I start to, learning the language quite late in my age. So I think that English as a second language, and of course, adding my speed of understanding, sometimes I need to kind of like revisit what I heard in order to really get it. I don't get it right away. So I tend to take time. By then, people just move on. And I'm just kind of behind, trying to kind of catch up. So that has been a kind of challenge for me. And sometimes, a facilitator give a little more time for people to maybe just sit in a little bit, and that by you taking time does not mean you don't have anything to say. It's just some people take this, need a little more time. And to go back to like my English as a second language, sometimes people just talk for me because they kind of get what I'm trying to say. But of course, I'm not saying the way it needs to be said. And so some people volunteer to just speak it for me. Sometimes that's okay because I kind of understand. It doesn't really bother me. But then I guess sometimes it does. That's not quite right. And so I just wanted to bring that point as well. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Kevin, I don't mean to jump in here, but do you mean to have your share still on, or do you want to open it up for a discussion where everybody can see one another?
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for that. There we go.
Well, I will share. There have been many times in my life as a Black female where I felt like I wasn't being heard. And a lot of it comes from stereotypes about what people think I know and going to talk about versus what I'm trying to talk about. And I'll use my time on the school board as an example. The stereotype that I was only interested in minority issues or affirmative action kind of issues, and I wasn't supposed to have knowledge about finances and the budget and curriculum and facilities and all those things that were part of my responsibility as a school board member. And so the stereotypes about what was expected of me as a Black female versus what I'm trying to offer up in the particular setting, that's been a constant recurring kind of issue, no matter what board, no matter what meeting, no matter what committee, that there are just certain roles and certain positions I was expected to take. And when I didn't take those positions and took other positions, it would always catch people by surprise, but you just had to get your point across. But to start off, you just weren't heard because it didn't fit the stereotype.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Well,
I
I
can also
have,
add on.
Oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Alana.
I was just gonna say, like during Black Lives Matter, I noticed there was so much power in activism and voices speaking out within the community, and yet we still, after so much work, after so much fight, still struggle and see the same issues occurring every day. Still signing petitions regarding police brutality, and I didn't see, or we didn't see as a community, enough, or if that any political feedback, change, or efforts to listen, being that they are the system that has formed these systematic forms of oppression that we are fighting. We were hoping, or the goal was to see some sort of change in those areas. So that was a time when I felt like the community wasn't heard, or at least heard enough under the circumstances, being that we still are struggling with those same issues. Another area of unheardness, I will say, is in areas of abuse that aren't necessarily physical. I feel like the community is just now recently opening an eye towards like financial abuse and mental abuse, and the traumatic experiences and traumatic traits that occur throughout those situations. So yeah, I feel like oftentimes when people try to reach out and speak up about their abuse and it's not in a physical stance, people tend to kind of sweep it under the rug, or they don't see it as valid necessarily, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's definitely an area where I feel like people go unheard, or not heard enough at least. So thank you.
Thanks for that.
So I have an example. I won't go into specifics because it's work related and it's kind of technical, but we have a process that's pretty inefficient. And I have made suggestions about how to change this process several times. And it just seems like every time that it gets brought up, there's just like an instant shutdown. And I think that it stems from people being resistant to change, right? Like when you're changing a process, it's going to require some work, and people just, it's natural as humans, I think, to resist change, but we have to work on it. And if people aren't willing, then there's nowhere to go. And I've been here for 6 years and it's still an issue. So I think there are some skills of how we can communicate when we're feeling not heard that maybe we'll learn. I don't know, Devin. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that. And I know, Annie, you've had something ready for us.
Mine's a little bit general. I worked in healthcare, and the workload just kept rising without employing other people. And when I would talk to the director, what I got was this very kind explanation about why we couldn't do that. And the feeling was she wasn't really listening, but that her face and her mouth said she was listening. But it was very patronizing, and so that yeah, was not effective for me. I didn't feel listened to.
Yeah, thanks for that. And any last comments anyone wanted to make before we move on? Okay. So one thing that I heard in a lot of what was shared today is, these was around rejection of experience, someone's experience being rejected. Hey, this is my reality that I'm seeing. Here's from what my perspective is happening, and that being completely rejected. I hear folks ignoring or not being aware or paying enough attention to these intersectional identities that people do hold, to be able to be an expert in more than one area, to have an experience that they can share from more than one side of their identity. What I hear also in all of this is, what does all of this cause, right? So at the end of the day, when someone's not being heard, it impacts them in some way. And what I see and what I often see is that creates harm. So big or small, people become harmed because of that, because someone isn't listening, because someone's idea that is fully fleshed out and thought of is being rejected. And that harm has spin-offs, things that aren't great, that we won't even know about, things that we can't know about, things that happen after that moment. So for me, whenever I am engaging an audience who, especially if they're already vulnerable, one thing to keep in mind is, how can I, to the very best of my ability, prevent causing another person harm? And sometimes that is just as simple as letting someone be heard, not rejecting them in the moment, letting them have out whatever it is they want to say, giving them the space and the time to express what they need to share with the group, with the room, with themselves. And that's not always easy. So another big lesson that I've learned from, facilitating groups, especially when it comes to public engagement, is, people have different ideas. At our core values, we have some values that we share, but maybe people are of different perspectives, different political backgrounds, different religions. And because we disagree, doesn't necessarily mean we cannot cooperate and collaborate. And what I have seen, and things that I want us to keep in mind as we go into these spaces where lots of different voices are being heard, is every voice, whether we agree with it or not, has a place. It tells a particular story from a particular perspective, and it may not actually sit with anything that we personally believe, but that's something that we cannot and should not reject or say is false, or any of the things that we have heard be explained. And so this is great in theory, but to see it in practice and to do it in practice is where the real learning happens, in my opinion. So what I want to do is share a video. And this is on a community project where we have community liaisons, people who bring back messages, people who maybe were not heard. The committee that put this program together and people that do things like this are interested in getting feedback from folks that are hard to reach, ones that they would not have otherwise heard from. And they have to use trusted community connections to do that. Mm-hmm. And so the folks that we're looking to hear from may not walk through the front door. Some of them will. Usually many of them don't do it that way. And so thinking about best practice, which we'll go over later, there's several things we want to keep in mind, several things that relate to equity when we approach communities, and things to consider. But everyone here, not that maybe we would all describe it as harm, but everyone here understands what that feeling is of not being heard, that feeling of not being taken seriously, that feeling that is that feeling, by whatever vocabulary word we want to use to describe it. And so that's what we want to center in these community engagements. How do we make sure that folks walk away feeling heard? Because when people do feel heard, they will engage more. They will engage at a higher level. Feeling heard has a lot of positive spinoffs as well. And ultimately, that's what we want, right? More input, more processing, more conversation. And to be truly welcoming can be actually also pretty challenging. So we get to practice listening. And so if I think, Shannon, if you can play the video, it's a short video, and then we'll come back and we'll have a quick chat about best practice. We're going to go kind of down this list that I've made in collaboration on other projects, just to see kind of, okay, have we considered all the things?
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Shannon, I don't think we can hear it, or I can't hear it.
Neither can I. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Give me just a second. Can you all hear now?
Yes.
Community liaisons are from underserved and underrepresented communities here in Seattle. They represent people of color, immigrants and refugees, people experiencing homelessness, seniors, youth, young adults, and people with disabilities. The Seattle landscape is very diverse, but it's also losing its essence because of gentrification. So community liaisons are advisors. It is people embedded in the community. People are the dot connectors, the bridge builders, and people trust them. And when you have that trust and that establishment, it's so much easier to navigate those systems that are oftentimes complex and hard to understand.
My name is Sabrina Abdullah. I am from the Cham refugee community. Cham people are a sub-ethnic group in Vietnam. We had our own kingdom, but once we lost our land, the people migrated to live in Vietnam, Cambodia, as well as along the west coast of the United States. As I was growing up here, I noticed that our community was very much closed off. We were very tight-knit, but we weren't really aware of what was going on in our city. And so as I grew up, I went to college, I was trying just to get more involved within the spaces that I was in. I didn't really even see myself as being like a spokesperson for my community ever. Like, I'm a girl, I'm young, I don't know, I thought it could just be someone that was older, had more experience, because it is intimidating being in a room where it's like city officials, there are people that have way more experience than I do, but to hear that my input is valuable, I think it just helps me build my confidence as to say like, okay, I have a voice, I have things I want to say, and there are people that are listening to me.
Youth are very visual. Yes, less words, more pictures. So youth being on the media advocating for the census, whether that's like visually showing it on an infographic or creating media that's specifically in multiple languages to show faces of like, here are people who are like me.
I belong Somali community. Somali community is a African community, Muslim community. You know, we started coming to Seattle early 1990. The people I belong to, they already feel different right now. When you hear the news, what's going on in politics, alienation. So the city can use this program to reconnect them, to make them feel they are cared about, and the city know them, they are there.
They help us do our job better. like as simple as that. They're the heart and soul of the program. I mean, just speaking to you right now, I feel so humbled and honored to even be in this position, because without the liaisons always giving us feedback, always telling what is going on there in the community, helping us understand the community dynamics and all the nuances, we will not be doing a good job as city planners, as city staffers at all.
I am really thankful to be a community liaison because from the trauma refugee community, we are very hidden even within our own neighborhood. So to have a seat at the table, to be visible, and that I'm even talking to the city about my community, a lot of the elders I know are supporting me because I'm a product of my community. Nice! So I'm really excited to see how I can grow in both my position in the city as well as within my own community as a youth lead.
From my involvement through community liaison to City of Seattle, they now can navigate more easily to city resources. That is important to know the city, don't ignore them, and through liaison, they get information, what they need. And that gives them hope, you know, that they belong to Seattle.
And I'm wondering if anybody had, anything come up for them during that video, any insights, anything that it's kind of emergent post that program and kind of how it works and everything before I make my comments and we move on to best practice.
This is Kim, and I thought about this community liaison concept before. I don't know if I get the ideas from them. I see it's from like 2009, but I definitely see the the value that it will serve the community. Recently, I've been kind of helping some community members to get some grants and during COVID, and the community liaison, without them, I mean, you will be able to really reach deep down the people who can't really reach some of the services that are out there. They will not be able to reach. So I think that that has a really great value, and then it's something maybe we can consider establishing, because that's how you can really reach down to the smallest level of community you can get to. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other feedback or comments? So one thing that actually it was Shannon who pointed this out, is within the approach to community engagement, it is about building relationships and trust, which takes time. So I think when we as like the greater we, capital W, go into post something, bring people in, bring people together, we have to remember that trust does take a lot of time to get the feedback and to build the relationships which will continue that feedback. It really is something we want to focus on. Relationships, do you know me? Do you trust me? Do you think that I will have your best interest in mind? And these community liaisons already have that with their communities. And so it really is about saying, how do we bring everyone to the table? And we're not going to be the ones to figure that out. We're going to be able to partner with the folks who will have the most perfect insight into the groups that they're already connected with, and we'll support each other in getting that done. And then also something I heard echoed in there was belonging. This idea that not only is it that you may be a very small part of the community, you are just as important and you belong here and we want to hear from you. And so some people say, well, if we look at the demographics of this community, there's such a small percentage that is X, Y, or Z. It's like, well, you know, if there's just one person in that category, I would want to hear from them. We should want to hear from them. You know, what are the barriers to them accessing and getting information? So yeah, with that, I want to screen share again, and we're going to just take a look at some of the best practice that I chatted about earlier. Let's see if I can find where I put it. I know it's on our agenda. One sec. Okay, there we go. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first category is meeting accessibility. So can folks get to the meeting space? So knowing that not everybody's comfortable with being recorded, these are kind of like best practice conversations to have, or just to be mulling over in our heads as we form our approach, as we think through, you know, how we actually going to operationalize this engagement. So one, if we are recording meetings, do we also have notes available for folks? A lot of these things we know kind of intuitively, or we actually do them, but it's nice to have them written down. So we're thinking step by step. Okay, well, if we're going to have a meeting, we might want to have notes. If we have notes, do we want to have just notes in English? When we conduct those sessions, what language are they in? You know, who are we inviting? And if it's a true invite, wouldn't we also want to find out if there's access needs where folks would really want to participate in a language other than English? So, you know, are we able to provide interpreters and meeting materials in advance? Can we arrange for those things? So not everything we'll be able to provide in short notice, but as we think about how we do not just this engagement, but all future engagements, it'd be great to think about, you know, what do all these things look like in action? You know, a lot of folks are working 9 to 5. You know, are we going to prioritize doing something outside of the regular business hours? It's great to keep that in mind. Beyond maybe a virtual meeting, you know, where folks may have other access, we talk about technology later, other access issues, are there other mechanisms that we can use to get feedback? So one is community liaisons that we discussed. Another could be emails. Another could be online platforms. You know, we want to be thinking about how do we set ourselves up to be able to collect feedback long term. Like, what's the best platform? So, you know, a year from now, we could say, hey, you know, go back to that place you went to and, you know, provide input. You know, if we meet people on the go and this is part of what we do, we could say, hey, I'll refer you over. This is where you can, you know, submit your information. We'll hear what you have to say. Frontline communities, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color engagement. Again, with those community liaisons, community groups, hard to reach populations, elderly communities, young families. How do we engage those families? This is a conversation. So those people and families are engaging somewhere in our community. If we know where they engage, that's where we can think to start setting up systems for them so that they can become more involved in the process. So if, for example, let's say City Hall is not the place where these people would typically be, I don't know that it would be the best way forward to start outreach there, where people are not, but to start outreach where people are, meeting them where they are. Understanding that, you know, some folks have been impacted by COVID currently. some folks here might even be impacted by COVID. Realizing that to take time out of their day to come and provide feedback, to, you know, give again, can cost them something. And it is best practice to say, hey, we're going to provide you some kind of compensation because you are the person that holds the knowledge, and we want to get more information from you for this process. Well, that deserves to be compensated, and at a rate that is fair, that we might compensate other people at for similar work. You know, making sure that they know their opinion is valued and we see them as an expert. We talked about meeting communities where they are, building those relationships. Overwhelm. This is really around using simple language and infographics and engaging materials and interactions. So, you know, recognizing that people have different learning styles even. You know, some folks don't do well to be lectured at for long periods of time and then ask for input. It just doesn't work for them. They work much better with a hands-on task. Hey, you know, organize these ideas for us, you know, bring a piece of paper, bring a pen. So just being able to offer a variety of ways that we are going to engage folks to make it interesting, to maybe do it a little bit different than what we've seen. What would we want? You know, what would we enjoy? Like if we were to walk in, never having an experience like this before, what would be something interesting for us to take away from that? We have technology and accessibility. Huge one. You know, not everyone's digitally connected. Are there other avenues that are non-digital for people to provide feedback? I think of newspapers. There's on National Public Radio, they have a feedback forum where they say, hey, call this number and leave a message for us. And we're going to get feedback from you that way. You know, it's a line that doesn't lead anywhere, but people can leave a voicemail and then someone can go through those and filter the information. So that, you know, just ideas out there. And then of course we have low participation rates. So I think the best way to kind of combat that is to have multiple forms of engagement. So you have maybe a space where people can come physically. You have maybe a space where people can come virtually. You have a space where, or a mechanism by which people can submit something on their phone or respond to an email, or, you know, you do outreach via newspaper. So the more avenues that exist, I think the easier it will be for people to engage. And these are just some of the best practices that, you know, I've come up with over time, and are definitely part of projects that I'm currently working on and in. And I'm just wanting to share those. And so as we plan for community engagement, I wanted to also have a discussion around you know, any plans or processes that this group has, if I could be supportive in the time that we have left to talk through what it looks like. People have questions or concerns. Shannon, feel free to chime in. Just really wanting to kind of have it out. What is the plan? How are we going to move forward? Making sure we're all on the same page as far as that piece is concerned.
Shannon?
I missed the last meeting, but I don't know that we have specific, like plans that specific yet. But I don't know.
We have 2 dates.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As far as like getting the word out, kind of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say a similar statement regarding how are we advertising and promoting these meetings to support the issue regarding having low participation rates. We know that things like technology and just overall access and transportation issues may contribute to that, but another important question is, do people even know that it's happening, and how are we advertising that and spreading the word in multiple effective ways? Some ideas I just brainstormed over, maybe like flyers, social media, during like, if we, I don't know if we have like a Lacey radio station, I don't know, maybe on our channel 2 or 3. See, I'm Generation Z, so I would say the newspaper, but I don't think a lot of us really do the newspaper. But yeah, just spreading the word effectively could be a really good way to get people involved, because I know a lot of people that may be really interested in speaking out on certain issues they want to be heard of, but they just simply don't know that we are starting these meetings.
You know, I think the identifying, key stakeholders or leaders in the community that we can, provide the information to, and ask them to, in turn, share with, their members, their community, and hope to increase participation that way. And then we have to look at how do various members of the community like to be communicated with. Is it through emails? Is it through social media? Through other means? That I think is important. And one thing I've learned that in dealing with a lot of the members of the BIPOC communities, the leaders in their community carry so much weight, in that if they say it is good, it is something that you should participate in, that it will be helpful to our community, that in itself brings a lot of support and participation.
So I agree with what Clinton said a lot, and of course, also utilizing a lot of community media that is not mainly the mainstream media, obviously, but Vietnamese community, Korean community, Chinese community, so forth. They have kind of like their own set of media, newspaper, magazines, and so forth, and those are also great media to reach them. And that the typical ways that we provide, like is not accessible by everyone, for sure. There's a language barrier, the lack of technical ability they have, no internet access for various things. So again, the community liaison type of thing, and also the community leaders utilizing the media within that community seems to be kind of like a little better fit for some communities.
Also, to add on to Clifton's statement, I feel as though not only should we refer and let leaders in the community know about this, but also like clubs and groups and small businesses just who have outreach to the community. So, as well as leaders and like newspapers, as Kim said, for different cultures and people in the community, we should also, or it would be a great idea at least, to give small businesses and other fellow communities that have our outreach to the community the information that they need to spread in order to get people to know. Even if it's sending an email to the business owner, or giving them a handful of flyers with the meeting ID. Something like that.
And to add on to that, one thing we can't forget, are the churches. They're huge in all of the communities. We share the information with them, and they share it with their parishioners, and that really increases our participation.
I wonder if I could ask Shannon, you gave us Leilani Jensen's name. It sounds like she is the person that, one of the people that would be doing the recruiting, the outreach. Does she have a flyer? Does she intend to have a flyer for us? Or I've sent her some ideas of where to spread the information, but just touch base with you, Shannon, on that.
Sure. So Commissioner Clay, Ms. Jensen leads our human resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts internally in the city. And so she was looking for, groups to reach out to for future recruitment here at the city. So as far as kind of a flyer that she'd be handing out, she's really looking for, opportunities for organizations that are external to the city to send any job listings to.
I misunderstood that. But possibly we could use her list as for our benefit to do our outreach.
I believe there's absolutely opportunity there, Commissioner Clay. A lot of the organizations that we'd be outreaching to, for recruitment for positions here at the city could also be an outlet for just letting, informationally know that we are holding these sessions.
Okay.
Another thing too, I don't know if we have or will have a way of, maybe having people register ahead of time so that we know a little bit who's coming. I think it's it would just be beneficial to know what needs there are before it happens. And if we don't know who's coming, then
Shannon, I'd be interested in knowing how the city has approached community engagement. City governments are always holding public hearings, getting input on first one thing and then another. I know you haven't been in the city of Lacey very long yourself, but maybe you can share with us, how does the city approach this when they're trying to reach to underrepresented communities and communities that haven't been a part of the mainstream with their points of view being known, whether it's an environmental issue, a traffic issue, a criminal justice issue, whatever the issue might be. How does the city go about making sure or trying to ensure that they're getting a cross-sectional point of view from its citizenry, given the makeup of Lacey?
Chair Jackson, that's an excellent question. And as you mentioned, I'll just number one say I haven't been with the city long. And number two, I've also been here, during COVID. And so there's a bit interesting dynamic with that as well, where we can't do a lot of engagement, currently out in the community. But what I have seen done here so far at the city, number one is they stood up the Commission on Equity to try to find more ways to get out and engage. And I just want to reiterate that one of the purposes of the Commission on Equity is really to increase participation from underrepresented groups. So some efforts that I have seen so far at the city is number one. Several commissioners have mentioned.
Does someone need to mute their phone?
Sorry, Shannon. Yeah, I think it's Kim. Oh, thanks, Kim.
Okay.
So, several things that I have seen so far is through email outreach and reaching out to organizations, a diversity of organizations to get information and news out. And so one example of this has been with our Lacey Cares initiative, which has been ongoing since 2020. And the idea with that was, sending these email blasts out where people could access a survey that could be taken by community members. And the survey itself was very general and very open-ended to allow community members, to say, whatever they wanted to say on certain topics. And so that survey went out here in the spring. Now, as part of that, we anticipated having more, in-person community engagement. However, at this point with COVID-19, we haven't been able to do that. And so as future phases of that project, we are looking forward to doing that in more depth moving forward. The second thing that I've seen the city done so far is create task force groups. And one great example of this has been in our Parks Department as part of the Lacey Cares initiative. They've created a task force with community members with the diversity of interest and had these task force serve essentially as kind of those community liaisons to go out and learn more from a lot of the organizations and groups that they are involved in to get some information and then report back to the city on, what kind of information and data is being provided. A couple of commissioners have commented on use of social media. So we have used social media a lot in the past to get information and news out. For example, the Lacey Cares initiative was shared and spread on social media. We're currently there's an opportunity right now for Parks, Culture, and Recreation to take a survey. It's online. It's running until October 31st. And this is really, the community's chance, and there'll be multiple other chances, but a starting point to provide some information on, park, culture, and recreation priorities for the city. Chair Jackson, does that help?
Yes, and I'm thinking about other resources in the city from the point of view of the development and production of a general purpose flyer that can be distributed in multiple kind of ways, including social media, churches, groups, clubs, a general purpose flyer announcing the 2 dates, the time, 2 or 3 general questions of what we are interested in from people, and what kind of city resources do we have that could help generate such a multi-purpose flyer such as that to get things going.
So Chair Jackson, we absolutely have the opportunity to create flyers, and that's certainly something we can do in the next couple of weeks and get that out to all the commissioners, and then also start sending that out to any organizations that we work with. We also have the Lacey Life, and this is sent out to every water bill here in the city. And so anticipating that the November issue was coming out, I did put a flyer, just a very brief flyer saying that we were going to be having these community meetings here in November and providing the dates. It was very broad. So certainly as we refine what we're intending to do with these community engagement sessions, we can create new flyers. We can upload that on our city website. The flyers did direct people back to the city website, so we can make sure that that is up to date and providing accurate information on what we're looking for. And Chair Jackson, I just want one more thing on the comments of what has the city done in the past. So I talked about the task force, and one thing that I really just wanted to stress with that group was that they went out into the community, into already to events that were already ongoing, to get feedback from community members, in addition to meeting with groups and organizations that they were involved in. So just for an example, they would go out to the regional athletic complex when there was a tournament going on to get more feedback from tournament goers. So they were meeting members of the community out in the community.
Okay.
That's good.
I have a question. Would it be feasible to take a photo of all of the commissioners and include that in some of the communication, saying, hey, meet your commissioners on equity, attend this meeting, share your feedback with them, any concerns. They get a visual of us to see that, how diverse of a group we are.
Commissioner Brown, that's certainly something we could do. And, as far as, expediting that process, perhaps if all of the commissioners wanted to send me a photo of themselves, that way we would have them all, we could organize that.
Yeah. Are you able to, if all of us were in the meeting and on the screen, can't you snap that?
I absolutely could take some shots of all the commissioners at this meeting.
That way you have everybody together.
Or perhaps we could wait
a little
till
funny lighting.
We could wait till next Monday's meeting, so that way all the commissioners have some time in advance before the photo shoot.
Right, I can get a haircut. Yeah.
So the 2 meetings in November, they will be they're going to be on Zoom, right? We don't anticipate having an in-person thing, do we?
So Commissioner Clay, that's a great point. And so, it sounds like just number one, and for the group, that we've transitioned into talking about our second agenda item, which is November community engagement sessions and discussions. Before maybe we carry on with this conversation, I just want to ask the group, kind of going back to just the common barriers that Tevin outlined, and then we can get more specific as we start to discuss the logistics of our meeting. Were there any questions or comments, just broadly speaking, that the commission wanted to discuss prior to getting into the details of our upcoming engagement sessions?
Well, I think as we look at these barriers that Tevin shared with us, one of the first questions come to in my mind is it in person or is it virtual? And then depending on that, a lot of these barriers may or may not be priority issues. And because we have that restraint, I think we're going to have to work a little extra hard as we're trying to get community engagement. But as we look at these barriers, they could really be magnified depending on what the reality is going to be that we have to deal with. You're talking about technology, talking about translations, all of these kinds of things. It can really be magnified if we're talking about online, or if we're talking about in person. So a lot of that has to do with the format that we're talking about for these two community meetings. But the barriers are going to be big regardless of either way we go when we're trying to solicit underrepresented people to who don't ordinarily participate in these kinds of governmental kind of activities.
And it would be important to ask for the feedback about what the barriers are. Were you able to get in? Would it be, would it be better if you emailed us? Were you able to understand in the English language? But that should be part of the feedback, I think.
Yes, and to add on to that as well, obviously, as hard as we work, there will be certain people who still have a couple barriers that we didn't necessarily comply with, or they just simply weren't able to make it. So for that population who wanted to join, we could always supply the community with just like maybe a questionnaire, how we could supply people with like a link to a survey that answers questions that we were oriented around during the meeting, or just in general, like what do you want, like what were you planning to discuss with us that you weren't able to, or is there any just certain broad aspect that you wanted to be heard or wanted to talk about that you weren't able to? So yeah, for the community that wasn't able to join, we could just supply them with a simple questionnaire regarding topics that we wanted to discuss during the meeting, or just a simple survey asking, what did you want to tell us that you weren't able to? Or is there anything that you, any questions that you have that you want to be heard, just so we can come back to the meeting and be like, hey, that was a great discussion. And we have some survey responses from the community as well that we can incorporate into our feedback and changes after our meeting.
And one thing I also wanted to highlight is, we have been working on statements and values that we hope we're going to be able to get some input on, some feedback from people on prior to finalizing them, as well as the strategic plan overall. And so I think this early engagement is a really great idea. It's great that it's planned for now so that people get used to at least some kind of communication with this group around, hey, we have more stuff coming your direction. It's okay if you can't join now, but at least now it's in their head. We've planted the seed that we are going to want to try to get, as much feedback as possible as people are able to give.
Yeah, and my experience in working with various communities, and I was a talent brand ambassador for a number of years. So all those things you talked about is the life I lived for more than a decade. We had to be intentional in reaching out to specific communities and inviting them in and saying, okay, if we're going to reach out to, say, the gay and lesbian community, we get representatives to come and meet with us to share concerns. Then we go to the Native American community. We go to the African American community. We go to, the Vietnamese community, or the Asia Pacific Islander community individually. After we do this, in general, and look for individual concerns or, input, as well. So to me, it's ongoing work, but you have to hit each community, because if you have a group and you have the group of people from different communities, some going to speak, some are not, you see. So, but then following up, and getting them individual, you get more specific input, and you get genuine concerns that they can share directly with us and not be afraid to share them in a general group.
And I think we have to be clear as we can, with the community of the purpose for these listening sessions. We, as an equity commission, we want to know what kind of inequities have they experienced? Are they concerned about going forward as a community from their particular perspective? And make sure that's the primary question we're looking for. What are their concerns around the issues of equity in the various aspects, where it breaks out into criminal justice and employment and economic opportunities and educational, where have they experienced the inequities? And as we begin to talk about crafting a strategic plan, those are the kinds of things we want to address. What strategies are we trying to turn the inequities into an equitable situation for everybody? And unless we know what those inequities are, we don't know what to try to address in our plan. And so regardless of what group we're talking to and under what circumstance, that's what we're trying to get at. What inequities have you experienced in the city of Lacey going forward? And we, as an equity commission, want to do our best in advising the city on how we can make this a much more equitable situation for all citizens.
Absolutely.
And so our messaging becomes real important as we're trying to encourage people to participate in this process.
Absolutely. And also to be, like you said, Commissioner Jackson, to be as clear as possible. So, I'm an advocate in other spaces. And when people hear that, sometimes, people from certain communities hear that I can help them or support them through anything that's going on, when I can't. I am limited as a person and with the resources and connections that I have. So to be as transparent as we can around what we can actually do as a commission. What we do find, and something I was actually just chatting with another group about, was they're planning to do a listening session as well, and I said, hey, what are you going to do with the things that you can't do? So someone comes in and they say, well, here's the issue, and you're like, wow, that's not even what this discussion's about, and it's a big issue, and I want to help you address it. How are we prepared to take on something that we're asking, and then people will give? And then, what do we do with that if they give too much? And we say, well, that is a burden, and I wish I could hold that for you, but we don't have capacity to do that. So then the question becomes, who do we partner with? Who can we actually, do we know what the resources are in the community that will support anyone, no matter what they bring to us? To know our resources, our local resources and national resources, to say, bring anything. We will approach and address the things that are within our control, and we will hold and care for those things that we cannot, and make sure that we find some way forward in that regard. And it may not be with us as individuals or as a group or even as a city government. Some things are just outside of that sphere of influence.
Yeah.
I think some things there are just limited resources for in general. There might not be a resource for a particular issue, and that's probably going to come up, and just being prepared, just individually to say we wish we could help, but as of right now, yeah, I mean, there's not a resource for everything, no matter where we're looking, or there are, but they're limited.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is, affordable housing, right? I was having a conversation at another conference where people were saying, hey, we want to go with this model where people have what they need when it comes to housing. And someone had brought up the fact, well, there's just not anything there really. So there's not a resource. However, there is maybe a way forward if we're really creative. And that might mean that, we speak to someone who might be able to speak with a legislator, or, we escalate to the level of someone who does have, some sway in something, just to make sure that that thing that was said, that was shared, is going to be heard by someone. Now we hear it and we are listening, but it really is, saying like, oh, we created the space and we created the platform and we asked for that input. So let's be very careful to make sure that we follow through when we say we're here to support, and not say like, oh, we're here to support, but not with everything, with like certain things. It's like, no, we can support with everything. Although, like you're saying, Commissioner Stolberg, there might not be a way forward right now with this group. We may be able to think about some other way to escalate those questions and those concerns to the appropriate people and make those partnerships. And I think that's really what it's all about.
Yeah,
I think that
there's going to be multiple issues rolled into one. I don't know how to word that, but just being aware that someone might come with an issue, and there are a lot of factors that we could look at individually.
So I think that's a great point, that we should be discussing and have some sort of a plan addressing that, because this is a moment where we can lose trust, because you invite people on and then of course we can't address everything, and that's really that's opportunity lost, easily lost, that you invited but then we're not able to help with that issue because it's outside of this boundaries and stuff like that. So I think we should spend some time really talk about those issues so that we utilize this opportunity fully.
And I think that's the reason why we need some kind of a preamble like statement.
Mm-hmm.
The Equity Commission exists for the purpose of So up front, it somewhat limits the plethora of issues that people can come forward with. We started out with the mayor expressing his desire for the city to be more open in embracing issues of racism and white privilege and these kinds of things. And so a preamble kind of statement. Why do we exist? Why now? Why now? And there's a reason why now. And so some kind of preamble statement that puts into perspective when we talk about inequitable concerns and issues. It isn't so much the top of the funnel, but it brings it down to a point where it's more manageable for us. Yeah. And people realize that we are an advisory group. And so just so they understand going in why these sessions are being held and what we hope to gain from it and what we hope to do with the information that comes out of it. Mm-hmm. I see Shannon's hand is up. Shannon?
Well, Chair Jackson, you just summarized everything really that I wanted to say there. So I could probably just put my hand down. I was just going to say, I think, going back to some of the best practices that Tevin mentioned was, about being transparent and then also having, information on what you're asking for in advance. Mm-hmm. And I think, just to put the context of, these engagement sessions, we're starting this to learn more about how to think about moving forward. And so we need to provide that context as well to say, this is a process, this is a starting point, and we need to hear information. And Chair Jackson, I thought your preamble, I think, sets up a lot of that context, in addition to just unpacking, very succinctly and accessibly, how we're starting this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my experience also has been that if we reach out to these various organizations and community members, they're going to want to educate us on their community. on what they're doing. And so it's going to be incumbent upon us to learn and about their communities and what they do and what their challenges are. I spent a lot of time, in meetings, presenting, being the only African American in the room, being the only male in the room, those types of things, because they wanted me to be there if we're going to build a relationship and share with me and educate me. So then I can walk away, knowing and more about their culture and their concerns. So I think they're going to reach out to us individually and say, hey, we have this luncheon, where we're going to be talking about this. Can you attend? Those are opportunities for us to learn and be in their environment where they're comfortable, and we come in and learn, and the relationship grows very strong when you do those types, of things. I've been the only male on a panel talking about female women employment of women, So you get some of those challenges, and I think we're going to be invited into some things once they get to know us and we start to build this relationship.
Could I suggest maybe that Commissioner Jackson, would you like to write some of your thoughts down as a draft for our preamble, for our purpose sessions that would get a little bit more concrete, that we could play with? You could send it to us, we could edit it. I just feel like a need to get something down on paper, a little bit more concrete things going.
Yes, and these ideas that we want to jot down and incorporate into our discussion, we could also incorporate into our advertising of the meeting. So if there are certain topics that we want to hear about, if there are certain topics we plan to discuss and address, if there are certain things that we want to hear about from the community, these are some things that we could include in our advertisement. Let people know in advance, like Shannon said, what we will be hoping to get out of our meeting, some goals and some key factors.
In answer to your question, Annie, I'd be willing to put something down as a starting point for discussion, incorporating the kinds of things Elena's is talking about, and working with Shannon, something maybe there's time to do in preparation for our meeting next Monday to get the ball rolling for whatever kind of flyer or advertisement or whatever that might be coming forward that we can begin to get in circulation. Shannon?
Dear Jackson, I'm just going to put my hand down again, because once again, here's my recommendations for the group. I know I want to be aware of the time here, that we have about an hour left of, when we typically close our meetings. So what I thought, just kind of to walk through this process, is maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the logistics, and then come back around to the idea of some of the materials and the questions that we're going to go over and how we're going to move forward with that. So just really quickly, I want to go back to Commissioner Clay, your comment about how are we going to host these meetings. And so, looking at the best practices, it's certainly something where, you want to provide as many opportunities for individuals to provide comments moving forward, and to be engaged and to be involved. So my recommendations for this group is to, number one, to provide some sort of hybrid solution for these community engagement sessions. So having some online elements, having a way for us to actually meet in person, following very strict COVID-19 protocols, which would require, checking off all of the boxes for city requirements, for example, social distancing, masks, etc. So having an in-person element is potential for these meetings, and I would recommend us looking into at least one of those meetings, allowing for that in-person element in addition to those online elements. And I think to expand the online element, something that I've heard a couple times from commissioners this evening is an opportunity for individuals to provide opportunities outside of the meeting itself via online elements. So for example, some sort of online poll or survey or some sort of mechanism for community members to provide feedback if they can't make it to any of the 2 scheduled meetings. So I'll take a pause right there and just see if there's any question, comments, or direction from this committee.
I just wanted to say, if we do end up preparing a flyer or advertisement, any sort of advertisement that we can all work together to spread throughout the community, it would be great if we were all provided with that. So if there's like a PDF of the flyer or just a announcement that you want us to share, we could all receive that. That way we could all go out into the community or into social media platforms and spread this message as a team. That way we can all access different areas of the community.
So that's kind of we have a specific ways to, you have any plans or?
So Commissioner Sauer, as far as advertisements of this, the listening sessions go, we can certainly send it out on some of the email lists that we have. We can also work with, some of the recruitment organizations that we send our job listings out to. We can also provide advertisements on all of our social media and websites. We can create flyers, and this is certainly something where we could get the flyers out to the commissioners, and the commissioners could help, spread those flyers out into the community. As I mentioned before, we advertised in a flyer that went out to every water utility subscriber here in the city. So that's already gone out, but we can certainly look at other ways in which we might be able to get more information out in the next couple of weeks. One thing that I do want to make everybody aware of is when we're looking at the clock here, we essentially have 3 weeks to put these flyers out into, or advertisements out into the community. So my recommendation would be certainly we want to work on some materials here in the next week. And then, bring it back to this group for kind of a final overview look. And then we can certainly, after that review at the next meeting, which we do fortunately have a meeting a week from now, which gives us some time to put together some materials. After the group has reviewed those, we can certainly work on getting them out into the community using our email, using, flyers, and then also using social media.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any plans to do it in multiple languages or?
Commissioner Sauer, we can certainly look into having multiple languages.
Yeah, without that, I don't think it's going to reach everybody most effectively.
Mm-hmm. And a consideration there is if the flyers are in multiple languages, that also is assuming, we would want interpretation or some kind of closed captioning in those languages as well. So it wouldn't just be the flyers, it'd be also the gathering would have those things set up. So that's an additional consideration.
And I just want to, my concern with the languages and getting those translated is just time. Because if we don't have these materials really finalized until next week, it would take a while to turn those around. So I just want to make that clear that there is a time issue with getting translations done, in the next 3 weeks with materials that won't be finalized until Monday.
One other mechanism that we might want to consider as we talk about social media, flyers, and all that kind of thing, as we get down to specific groups with particular kinds of barriers, we might want to look at focus groups. Some focus groups where we can have the translations happening from the person with the comment and the response and that kind of thing. But anything and everything we can do to get out to those various communities. And focus groups work really well. And you get a ton of good information and data in a smaller setting than, you know, in any of these other things we're talking about technologically. And, you know, so it's not either or, it's like and, as many of those mechanisms that we can utilize to get the kind of information we hope to garner from our community as we're going forward.
I agree. And as we close this topic, I'm not sure who's going to be forming these flyers or announcements, but if there are any key points that we want to just jot down, as Annie said earlier, that are very important to apply it onto our flyer, if there are any of those that anybody wants to share, I think that might be a good idea. That way we are not missing any important factors that we should apply to these advertisements. And it's just a thing that we need to let the community know.
And that gets back to the context piece, the contextual framework that Shannon was referring to. And once we establish that conceptual framework of why these hearing sessions are even being done, would help put everyone in as much of the same frame of mind to help us focus in on the comments we're looking for. And so that conceptual framework will be very helpful, and it can be short and succinctly stated where it can be a part of a flyer of, you know, that kind of thing. So if we can aim towards having a draft or something by next Monday's regular commission meeting, and then everybody get some feedback and make sure we've hit the words that we think can conjure up interest in wanting to come share with us. But I think a conceptual framework will alleviate a lot of, well, why are they doing this? What do they want to hear from us? We can help guide that just by setting a conceptual framework for these two listening sessions.
And to also, you know, to remind us, so I think it's great that we're engaging at this stage. One thing I will want to make sure that I keep in mind is what we would typically do is have a vision, mission, other values already sorted out prior to community engagement, which was kind of the plan, but we want to make sure that we're, you know, doing things that feel timely. So that's why we're doing a little bit in a different order. So what I imagine is whatever statement comes out of this that's ready for next week is going to be very similar to the mission statement that we're going to use overall, because the mission is one of the most critical pieces, and it does tie what we're up to and why we're up to it, and why now is the, you know, why now is the answer to that is within the mission. And then what do we hope to get out of it is the vision. So just keeping in mind that, you know, if we do these things, we won't recreate the will in that regard. We'll take what we have and we can apply that and use it as a part of the mission, since that was kind of already a construct that we had to have all those things figured out, the values, the mission, the vision, so people could easily grab onto what we're up to and see themselves in it as well.
Would it help to Commissioner Jackson to send us, you know, later in the week, something that we could add to or give feedback to before the next Monday's meeting? Would that be helpful?
Well, let me get with Shannon and see what we can craft by way of some basic draft language to get out for people's consideration to think about.
Okay.
I don't know how much give and take back and forth, you know, put something out, people give input, you know.
Yeah.
A week goes by really fast.
Yeah.
Really fast. So other than make that commitment for me, and I certainly don't want to make any commitment for Shannon, but something that the group can chew on at the next meeting.
On Monday.
Shannon, I see your hand.
Yeah.
So Chair Jackson, my recommendation is we can certainly work on that. And then as part of the agenda packet, hopefully by Friday, which I typically send out to you all on Fridays, we should have some drafts that can be included as part of that packet, so that the rest of the commissioners can have the weekend to read through, digest, think about edits, additions that they want to make on it. And then that can be part of our last conversation on Monday's meeting, is just fine tuning and then starting, so I'll come back with some recommendations on how we want to move forward with some advertisements and get some feedback on that plan moving forward for the next 3 weeks.
Great.
And I was gonna offer up too. So part of the agenda, which is planned for Monday, is the mission, right? So we talk about mission statements. We look at examples. Why are they formed? How are they formed? If it would be helpful, folks could, and maybe this is a way to do it, Shannon, but could forward just your high level comments and ideas directly to Shannon, and Shannon can forward them to me. And I can reincorporate those into what I already had planned for this presentation on mission. Because again, I do think they're going to be very similar, the mission that we want to have in this context and the mission that we have in the context of our strategic plan and what we've been doing from the beginning. And that might be just an easier way to go about it. So, you all don't have to do the wordsmithing, but you do have that input, and then I can take what I already have and say, okay, well, I'm going to take this element and this element and then present it back to you all on Monday, if that sounds like something that would work for everyone.
I think that approach would help move things along quite nicely. Yeah.
To be clear, can I clarify what the questions about what's important, why the commission is important, those two questions that we were going to work on to do
exactly.
it prior to, send it to Shannon prior to next week.
Precisely. The question was brought up, I think it was Commissioner Jackson was saying, why now? This is part of the mission. This is all part of the mission, and this is part of what we're asking about. So that's how all these things are connected.
Yeah.
So if you all forward that along, me on my side, I already have something that is that I was planning to present. So now I can just incorporate it a little bit early. So the rendition that I show you all, the draft I show you all, will be a little bit further along because we're actually doing it at this stage rather than next Monday's stage. So I think it kind of just fell together in that way, which is kind of nice.
Okay.
I wonder if we should go back to your question, Shannon, about the hybrid, about the number 1 or number 2, the online, the in person.
Yeah, absolutely, commissioners. So again, my recommendation would be to provide that hybrid option of online and in person, and then also an additional online element where individuals could provide comments and feedback on their own time rather than the prescribed times that this commission has chosen.
I agree.
Yes.
Are there any additional alternative mechanisms for capturing community voices that we could potentially consider?
I like idea of having focus group, especially if we don't have time to do the alternate language. Maybe we can have some community leaders who could collect the input for us as well.
And also to mention again, things like polls, surveys, questionnaires online are another way to accommodate for the issues that may result in people not being able to attend who still wanted to get their voices heard.
You had talked about having a Commission on Equity email site or address that it could be ongoing, and that Shannon would bring to us whatever was on the email. But this might be a time to start that.
So Commissioner Clay, just an update on that. We have had the email address running for the last 6 weeks. And it is advertised on our website for the Commission on Equity. So that is available, and that's certainly a tool we can use moving forward.
Okay.
So Shannon, We had a two-part agenda for tonight, and actually what we've been talking about was primarily the first agenda that involved Tevin, and now, you know, there was an anticipated second part of the agenda to talk about the November community engagement sessions, which we've been doing concurrently. Am I right?
That is correct, and that's just how well those two items fit together.
So are there any other aspects of agenda item number 2 that we haven't talked about that still needs to be dealt with?
Commissioner Jackson, I just want to go back really quickly to advertisement for a second, if I may. And, you know, I've described a couple of ways that, you know, we can reach out. And I just want to know if the Commission on Equity has any other ideas. So we've talked about, you know, sending our emails out to email lists that we have existing, creating flyers that we can, you know, distribute amongst this group and then amongst our partners, advertising on social media. And I know, you know, we talked about having translations and interpretations, but I just wanted to just open this conversation up again to see if there's any thoughts or ideas moving forward on how we could advertise.
Well, Alanis, I'm interested in how we get to the younger members of the community. I know they use, you know, Twitter and Instagram and all those types of things. Would they be effective, Alanis, in getting the word out?
Yes, most definitely social media platforms would be a great way to access the younger community, as well as sending out flyers and notifications and advertisements to local schools and other youth programs would be a great way to get word out. I imagine if we were to let schools know, they would possibly distribute our flyers out onto the school or send an email home or include a morning announcement. So things like that are another great way to incorporate the youth community through social media, and letting local schools be aware of our meetings would be another great way to access the youth community.
Yeah, Alanis, and maybe Commissioner Jackson, do you know if we have to apply to be able to communicate, say, to the North Thurston School District? I know when working with school districts, they have no requirements that we have to meet and sign up to be able to communicate or have access to students and faculty.
We could check with the district's public information officer and their communications director and find out what are the processes and procedures to get written information into the schools. Yeah, they do have some guidelines, because you can imagine every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants their propaganda in the schools.
Right.
You know, and so that becomes a community partner that we want to partner and communicate with. But we'll just have to comply with that.
Yes.
But we can find out what that is.
And not to answer.
And Chair Jackson, we certainly have worked with North Thurston School District and can reach out. And, you know, I just want to say, you know, we have in the past, and one good example of that was actually for our youth council. And, you know, it was a really great mechanism for, you know, reaching out and getting youth members.
Okay, great.
And not to answer your question with the, sorry.
Go
ahead.
And if needed, I could most definitely represent our team by informing the school about our future plans, and hopefully having them incorporate some advertisements and positive enforcement and education on our commission and you know, other future plans that we have, as well as our meeting.
And Commissioner Blackburn is also our youth council representative, which I believe there is a youth council meeting tomorrow. And if there's a report out, it's a great opportunity.
Yes, and I can most definitely, we also have a social media platform as a youth council as well. So whatever flyer or advertisement that we prepare, I will make sure, I'm not in charge of that, but most definitely get our voices heard in that area, and hopefully get our flyer or advertisement presented on that platform as well.
Tevin, you were trying to say something?
I didn't want to answer Shannon's question with a question, but I am curious, how did the folks here find out about the commission? And maybe there's a way forward there as well.
I just happened to look on the website one day to see the website, and I saw the announcement. You got-
I
I'm
had
on the
one like
Lacey Youth
council
Council.
member. Oh.
Sorry. Oh my gosh. Zoom.
I
hate it.
know.
But yeah, I was elected from the Lacey Youth Council to be our Commission of Equity representative.
But
I
there
heard
was
about
a general announcement that went out, you know, saying if you were interested in being considered for this equity commission, you submitted a letter of interest, and that letter of interest went to that task force of people who had been somewhat functioning as a quasi task force, and they made the selection from the people who submitted letters of interest. And that's how the 7 of us came about.
Shannon, that was particularly successful. That initial outreach had, you know, a decent number of responses, or that avenue was pretty useful.
We got a good number of applicants for the commission. Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's great to know that, you know, at least that method is something that has worked and might work again.
I had another idea for outreach, and that is there's a magazine or a newspaper, The Ranger, on the base, on Joint Base McCord, because we have a lot of military families who have issues, and a lot of military families who then move here, stay here. So want to figure out ways to connect with them too.
Yeah, and that leads me to a question for Shannon. Are there budgetary issues with us, you know, beginning to do these types of things? Because if we're talking newspapers and other things, those things come at a cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Commissioner Brown, we certainly have some funds for advertising. And so, you know, if this body wants to move forward with a couple of advertisements in some local newspapers, we can certainly explore, you know, what those costs would be, and, you know, what the budgetary impact would be.
Okay.
And at the same time, a lot of what we're talking about here constitutes a public service announcement at no cost.
Yeah.
That we need to explore fully, make use of the free resources as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on this topic, on this number 2 topic? Shannon, anything else you need from us?
Yeah, I have one last question for Shannon. Do we have a media, does Lacey have a media go-to person?
So Commissioner Brown, we have a public affairs department that is made up of a couple of outstanding individuals, and they will certainly be helping us put together any materials that we are going to be spreading and producing here moving forward.
Well, and they should have a contact, say at King 5 or Como or somewhere, or at the newspaper, that could come and do a story or something, or interview to highlight us.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, Commissioner Brown. We can certainly, so what we typically do is we release press releases, and those are sent off to all of the media contacts that we have. So we could certainly release a press release, you know, as far as these community engagement sessions, but we could also just reach out to those community contacts outside of a press release and let them know that this is going on as well.
Right.
Great.
Is there anything else on the topic of community engagement sessions?
Chair Jackson, the only thing that I would just reiterate is we've got some work to do. I think I've got some good direction, and we'll be working with the chair on creating some materials for us to review at our next meeting, which is October 25th. And I just want to remind all of the commissioners that in addition to us taking a look at these draft materials, Thanks to the recommendation of Commissioner Brown, we'll also be taking a photo. So I just want to remind that one more time, and I'll send that out as well in our packet on Friday, just a reminder that we are going to be doing that.
Great, great. Any other comment from any commissioner? Well, thank you all for making extra time available for this work session tonight. I think it puts us in pretty good position to have a very robust discussion on this next Monday night and make the best use of the 2 or 3 weeks we have before that first session comes up. So thank you so very much, and we will be in touch. Have a good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good
Good
evening.
night.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.